After 1 year of our wedding, my wife and I decided to escape the city and rent an Airbnb woods cabin for the weekend. Everything seemed perfect. The weather, the remote and peaceful location, the cozy little cabin nestled among the trees. It was just what we needed to decompress from our hectic lives and reconnect with each other. When we arrived, an elderly couple who owned a nearby home greeted us enthusiastically. They showed us around the cabin, pointing out where extra towels and firewood were kept, and let us know to pop by if we needed absolutely anything. I smiled politely, already dreaming of when we'd finally have total privacy. We unpacked, and I could feel the stress melting away with every breath of fresh forest air. But scarcely an hour later, a sharp rap at the door interrupted us. I opened it to find our hosts letting themselves in, making themselves at home on the couch as they prattled on about keeping us company. Mortified, I tried hinting that we preferred to relax alone, but they just laughed as though I'd made a silly joke. The husband even had the audacity to ask me to fetch them drinks from our kitchen. As they made themselves further at home, turning on the TV and fireplace, my wife and I exchanged helpless looks. Our romantic weekend was being shattered before our eyes. Finally, I bluntly asked them to give us some space, but they waved off my increasing frustration. "But we must celebrate newlyweds properly," the wife trilled, as the husband added. "This will be such a fun evening for all of us." At my wit's end, I stepped out to call the cops while my wife kept anxiously eyeing their bizarre behavior inside. Thank goodness the authorities swiftly removed our deranged hosts, though they seemed utterly oblivious to wrongdoing. The sheriff later informed us that the duo were not actually the cabin owners. The real elderly couple had gone missing recently under dark circumstances, and a search of the couple's home revealed possible connections to other disappearances in these very woods over the years. We left that dreadful place shaken to the core. Our anniversary retreat had narrowly avoided becoming another tragic cold case thanks to those psychos knocking on our door. Now I triple-check all lodging reviews, unwilling to ever tempt fate again. I couldn't believe how close we'd come to who knows what kind of danger. Every little detail seemed amplified now in my memory. The way the fake hosts had casually settled in, making themselves comfortable as if it were their own home. The eerie insistence on celebrating our anniversary together despite our clear discomfort. It sent shivers down my spine, thinking of what could have happened if we hadn't acted swiftly. As we packed up, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. The sheriff's words echoed in my mind about the other disappearances in those very woods. It made my skin crawl, thinking that we had almost become another dark statistic. Driving away, I glanced back at the cabin, a sense of relief washing over me that we were leaving that place behind. But a lingering fear lingered, a fear of what could have been if we hadn't been so assertive about getting help. That cabin, once a dreamy escape, now stood as a haunting reminder of how easily things could go terribly wrong. In September last year, I found myself in Las Vegas for a basketball tournament. Usually, I'd crash with teammates, but this time I was on my own, staying in an Airbnb near the Vegas Strip. Turns out, the neighborhood wasn't as great as I'd thought. The Airbnb host, Megan, was a puzzle. Her profile picture? A flower. She'd given me a key code for a studio attached to her house. Red flag. The code was 1098764. Yet, the Wi-Fi password was my password. I figured Megan wasn't too savvy with tech. Around 9:30 p.m., things took a bizarre turn. Tapping on my window, covered by drapes. I mumbled a confused, "huh." The tapping paused, then started again. Louder this time, I said, "Hello?" and it ceased. Worried, I messaged Megan, wondering if it was her. Her response came later, claiming she'd been bringing water but left, thinking I was asleep. I felt on edge, debating whether to step out or shower, but I stayed put. Then, around midnight, noises outside, followed by someone trying the key code. The door unlocked. Panic surged. I dashed and slammed the door on the intruder. They insisted it was their room, saying they were Megan. I called the cops, yelling for help. The police arrived, seemingly unfazed by my account. They stuck around until I got an Uber. Megan, defensive and changing stories, didn't offer an apology. Leaving, I couldn't shake off the fear. I never caught a glimpse of the person trying to enter. The timing felt planned, targeting my vulnerability after a late flight. The tapping at 9:30 p.m. struck me later and seemed like a test, checking if I was asleep. It all felt like a setup. It could have been just a break-in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it could have escalated to something much worse. It was March 2022 when I booked a solo Airbnb stay in a remote part of Phoenix for an upcoming job interview. Scrambling to find lodging on a tight budget, I lucked into a tiny guest house rental way cheaper than any dreary hotel. Sure, it was situated off a winding dirt road in the desert outskirts, but the charming photos of colorful cacti and breathtaking red rock vistas won me over, and the 30-minute commute wasn't terrible. Arriving at the property, I took in the quirky artistic touches like a wave-shaped succulent garden and rusty metal owl sculptures adorning the walkway. Inside, the boho chic decor of wool blankets, clay pots brimming with sage bundles, and a framed topographic map reflected the whimsy of a free-spirited owner. I instantly felt warmth and creative inspiration I hoped would infuse my interview preparation. That first evening, I reviewed notes at the hand-carved wooden table, watching the room slowly darken to blackness outside. Just as I switched on a lamp, an abrupt tap at the window made me jump. Peering out at the vast, shadowy wilderness, I detected no signs of life. Likely just a curious coyote or heavy desert winds, I reasoned, turning back to my laptop. The interview went smoothly the next day as I dazzled the panel with everything I had absorbed in my cozy oasis. I spent the next 48 hours exploring the nooks and crannies of the vibrant downtown, fueling up at quirky cafes and admiring street art. I unwound for golden hour in the little house's backyard daybed, snapping photos of the breathtaking palette of magentas and violets streaking the sky. That night, relaxing inside, another startling tap shook me from my aimless browsing. Heart-pounding, I inspected every shadowed corner outside, yelling stern warnings into the void. Had someone been lurking unseen, observing me? The thought sent shivers skittering down my spine. Or perhaps the isolation was simply feeding my imagination. The next day, packing up to leave, I heard a faint scuffling under the creaky floorboards. Crouching slowly toward the closet, I yanked it open to reveal nothing but my own stuffed suitcase. Laughing anxiously at my riled-up nerves, I finished getting ready, contacted my skeptical host about strange noises, and left the whimsical guest house behind me. With its odd occurrences and eccentric personality, the desert dwelling would forever mystify, yet intrigue me in memory. Had my mind conjured phantom sounds in the barren solitude? I'll never know for sure, but I avoided peering out into the darkness on my lonely drive back downtown, just in case. My girlfriend Amanda and I took a trip to a remote cabin in the Smoky Mountains in the fall of 2022. I had found a cute little Airbnb listing for an off-grid cabin with tons of good reviews, so it seemed trustworthy enough. The cabin was a small, old-fashioned log cabin with no electricity way out in the woods down a long dirt road. The nearest neighbor was the owner who lived about a mile away. We arrived around 3 p.m. and spent a nice evening cooking on the wood stove and playing Scrabble by oil lamp light. After hiking all day, we were exhausted. Amanda headed up to the loft to sleep while I stepped outside for some fresh air. About 15 minutes later, I heard a loud banging against the side of the cabin. Before I could react, Amanda called down asking if that noise was me. I said no, it must have been a tree branch falling. We dismissed it, but then came another startling crack against the walls. I rushed inside as Amanda climbed down the ladder, looking freaked out. I tried to seem calm but told her to grab our knives while I kept watch. We heard odd scraping outside, so I called out with no response. The noises got louder and more frequent over the next few hours. Thumping, scraping, rattling, clearly not any animal we knew of. At one point, we pulled up the loft ladder in case someone tried getting in. We huddled there in silence all night, terrified as the chaos continued outside. At dawn, we warily emerged to inspect the surroundings. Amanda's car seemed fine, and there were no signs of intrusion or damage. As we hurriedly left, I reported it all to the skeptical owner. He suggested maybe a bear, but the deliberate pacing and banging didn't fit. We still debate over what the true explanation could be. Perhaps a deranged mountain man was trying to scare us off his territory. All I know is we're lucky neither of us ended up murdered in that cabin from hell. December. What a lovely month. 2 years ago, my girlfriend Leah and I were so excited to finally take a weekend trip together to a cozy cabin in the Poconos we found on Airbnb. The pictures showed an adorable log cabin, all polished wood and stone fireplaces, tucked away in a peaceful pine forest next to a glistening lake. It seemed perfect for a romantic getaway. Secluded, scenic, and even a jacuzzi tub. Driving up the long winding path from the main road, though, I felt the first trickle of unease. The deeper we went into the remote woods with no cell service, the thicker the forest pressed in around us. The darkness pooled between knotted trees that arched ominously over the path gave me chills, despite the sunshine. When we pulled up to the charming cabin, Leah gushed over the details just like the photos, while I shrugged off my nerves. Lugging our bags inside, however, my skin prickled at the heavy silence permeating the place, so removed from civilization. Even flipping lights on, the shadows clung to corners like a lingering dampness. Despite it all, Leia and I were determined to make the most of our time alone together. We got the hot tub bubbling, made dinner in the cozy kitchen, and reminisced over wine by a crackling fire, cozied under a blanket. Until we heard the scraping. It started faintly, clawing noises trailing the outside walls. We peered through the windows, but couldn't make anything out in the dark tree cover. Then came heavy stomping footsteps on the porch, the door rattling violently in its frame. No matter how shrilly I demanded who was there, only ominous silence answered as we cowered together, the shivering firelight casting wild dancing shadows around us. We were completely isolated, with no neighbors for miles to hear our cries for help. The barrage continued relentlessly for hours, circling the cabin trying to get in as we hid trembling inside. Some demented psycho knew we were there, utterly alone and at their mercy. Even our attempts to sneak away were foiled when Leah's car alarm blared, giving our position away. By dawn, the assault had ceased, a trail of our tormentor eerily cold. We fled that place, shaken to the core, despite no signs of a break-in. Leah swears she spotted fleeting figures stalking us from between the dense trees our entire drive out. All I know for sure is we will never tempt fate by renting a secluded cabin again.